She thought it would be the night her life finally changed, but instead, it became the night she was left alone at a table for two, humiliated and heartbroken. What Sofia Alvarez didn't know was that someone powerful was watching her from the shadows. And his decision that night wouldn't just rewrite her story. It would shatter the line between two worlds and prove how love can rise from the most unexpected places. Back in her one-bedroom apartment, the cracked mirror reflected a face she barely recognized. For 24 years, Sofia had lived in the background of other people's stories. But tonight, in the borrowed navy dress her best friend Carla had begged her to wear, she almost looked like someone else, someone braver. Her hands shook as she smoothed the fabric, every stitch reminding her the dress wasn't hers. The black heels pinched, but Carla's voice still echoed in her head. At least once in your life, Sofia, you have to try. For 3 years, Sofia had polished glass and mopped marble floors in the bare estate of Daniel Harrington, one of Chicago's most respected businessmen. To him, she was invisible, a polite nod in the mornings, a distant thank you at night. But tonight, she wasn't a housekeeper. Tonight, she was just a young woman stepping into the unknown, her heart brimming with fragile hope. Clutching her small purse, she tucked in the last of her savings, barely enough for parking, maybe a drink. She whispered a prayer under her breath, kissed her mother goodbye on the cheek, and promised she'd be home late. For once, Sunday wouldn't be about folding laundry or helping at the Pilsen market. This night was hers. The drive into downtown dragged on, every stoplight rattling her beat-up car like a warning. The radio offered nothing but syrupy love songs, each one making her pulse race faster. By the time she pulled up to the Golden Rose, a restaurant glowing like an oasis on a Chicago street corner, her stomach was a knot of nerves. Sofia wasn't used to marble floors or glittering chandeliers. Her world was bleach-stained rags and grocery store budgets. But she told herself, just this once, maybe things could be different. Ethan Morales, her so-called mystery date, had promised he'd be waiting at a window table by 8 o'clock sharp. Over text, he'd seemed warm, funny, down to earth. He'd talked about working hard, about valuing the simple things. He'd even told her he'd order something special just for her. Sofia clung to that promise as she stepped into the Golden Rose at 7:42. Her breath caught at the sight of gleaming white linens, candles flickering like tiny beacons, and couples leaning close over plates she could never afford. The waiter's eyes slid over her outfit, his professional smile hiding something faintly mocking. "This way, miss." His tone made it clear she didn't belong. But Sofia lifted her chin and followed him anyway, her heels clicking against the marble until she reached the empty table by the window. She sat carefully, clutching her purse tight, her heart fluttering like a trapped bird. At exactly 8 o'clock, she whispered under her breath, "He'll walk in now." Her eyes locked on the entrance, waiting for a man with kind eyes to appear. Minutes slipped by. The waiter returned. "Would you like to order, miss?" "Not yet," she said, stretching a smile across her face. By 8:15, her palms were slick with sweat. By 8:30, she was bargaining with herself. Maybe traffic, maybe an emergency. She kept scrolling through his last text, reading the words that had carried her through the week. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow, beautiful." Words that once felt like a promise now curled like mockery. All around her, laughter bubbled from other tables, glasses clinking, soft toasts filling the air. Each sound cut like a knife. Her purse felt heavier by the second, her small savings burning inside it. A single drink here would swallow half of it, yet ordering nothing would only highlight how out of place she was. Even the waiter's polite mask was cracking, his patience thinning. She could see it. She was wasting his table. By 9:15, Sofia stopped lying to herself. Ethan wasn't coming. The man who had filled her phone with sweet words and shining promises had vanished without explanation. Her chest tightened, eyes stinging, but she bit her lip hard. She would not cry here, not in front of them. Over and over, she whispered to herself, "Don't break here. Don't give them the satisfaction." Then her phone buzzed. Her heart leapt until she read the message. "Sorry, can't waste my time with a girl like you. We're not compatible. Good luck." The words hit harder than a slap. A girl like you. Her mind twisted on the phrase. Did he mean poor? A cleaner? Less than? She wasn't a woman meant for golden restaurants. At least, that's how it felt. Sofia swallowed hard, shoved her phone deep into her purse, and rose on trembling legs. The navy dress that once made her feel almost beautiful now clung to her like a cheap costume. The borrowed shoes carved into her feet, each step a punishment. Every whisper in the room seemed aimed at her. Every laugh, another dagger reminding her she didn't belong. Head down, she weaved between tables, desperate to vanish. Her reflection caught in the glass door, red eyes, blotched cheeks, dignity hanging by a thread. "Just make it to the car," she whispered to herself. But she wasn't invisible. From a shadowed booth in the corner, A pair of sharp gray eyes had been watching every moment. Daniel Harrington had arrived an hour earlier for a dinner meeting that was abruptly canceled. He'd stayed only to skim through contracts, until something else pulled his focus. A young woman at a window table, clearly out of place, waiting with fragile hope. At first, he couldn't place her. But when she pushed back from her chair and moved toward the door, recognition struck like lightning. Sofia Alvarez, his own housekeeper. The quiet woman who had spent 3 years ghosting through the bare estate, polishing glass, folding linens, never asking for attention. Only tonight, she wasn't in her work clothes. She wasn't hiding behind a ponytail. Tonight, she was vulnerable, luminous, even in the middle of heartbreak. And Daniel saw her, truly saw her, for the first time. As Sofia paused near the exit, bracing herself against the wall, fighting not to cry, something stirred inside him. Something he hadn't felt in years. An urgent need to protect her. His empire had been built on control, on keeping emotions out of the equation. But watching Sofia fight for dignity as the world laughed behind her, his heart hammered with a reckless thought he couldn't ignore. Would he step forward? Would he change her night? Maybe even his own life? Sofia tried to steady her breathing as she leaned against the wall, clutching her purse so tightly her knuckles turned white. Humiliation pressed heavy on her chest, threatening to crush her. She was seconds away from pushing through the glass doors when a voice, low, calm, familiar, spoke her name. She froze. That voice didn't belong to Ethan, and it wasn't her imagination. Slowly, she turned. Standing just a few feet away was Daniel Harrington, flawless in a navy suit, his piercing gray eyes locked on hers with an intensity that stole the breath from her lungs. Her first instinct was panic. This was her boss, the man who signed her paychecks, the man who had moved through her life like she was invisible. And now, of all nights, he had to see her like this, broken, humiliated, standing in borrowed shoes that cut into her feet and a dress that was never truly hers. Her voice trembled. "Mr. Harrington, I didn't know you were here." She swiped at her smudged makeup, but it was useless. Shame was written across her face. To her surprise, Daniel didn't give her judgment. He didn't retreat behind that cool distance she knew so well. Instead, he stepped closer, his voice lowered so only she could hear. "Sofia, you don't have to explain anything to me, but I can't just stand by while you're hurting." The words were soft. Too soft. Almost impossible to believe they came from him. The man who ruled boardrooms with iron composure, who built an empire on logic and control. And yet here he was, looking at her as if she mattered. Her head shook, her voice cracking. "I'm fine. Really, I should go. I don't belong here." She tried to step away, but his hand moved instinctively, hovering just short of her arm, as though he wanted to bridge the space but was afraid of crossing the line. "Please," he said, and there was weight in his tone she had never heard before. "At least let me sit with you for a few minutes. No expectations. Just let me keep you company tonight." Her breath caught. Every part of her screamed to refuse, to protect what little pride she had left. But then she saw it, the rawness in his eyes. Protective, almost pleading. And she nodded. Without another word, Daniel guided her back toward the window table, ignoring the curious stares that followed. They sat down. The air between them was heavy with questions unspoken. But for the first time that night, Sofia felt a strange calm settle over her. The waiter reappeared, and his expression shifted the instant he realized who now sat across from Sofia. Just moments ago, he had been impatient, dismissive. But now, facing Daniel Harrington himself, the man transformed into pure courtesy, his tone dripping with respect. "Mr. Harrington," he asked quickly, "will you and your guest be dining with us this evening?" "Yes," Daniel replied without hesitation. His voice was calm but decisive. "Bring us the chef's recommendations. And your best red." There was no room for argument. Sofia's cheeks flushed. She leaned closer, her voice low. "You don't have to do this." But Daniel turned toward her with a half smile, softening the sharp edges of his usually stern face. "I want to. Tonight. You deserve far better than what you were given." When the food arrived, conversation began tentatively. Sofia's words were fragile, spilling out in whispers as she told him about Ethan, about the cruel message that had gutted her. She braced herself for silence, maybe an awkward nod. Instead, Daniel's jaw tightened, his voice steady and firm. "Any man who would treat you like that isn't worth a second of your time. He doesn't know what he lost." There was no pity in his tone, only conviction. And that stirred something in her, something she hadn't felt in years. Dignity. For the first time, she looked at him differently. Not as the billionaire whose floors she polished, but as a man, sitting across from her with his sleeves rolled back, leaning in slightly, listening as if every word mattered. He asked about her family, about her childhood in Santa Fe, about her dream of someday owning a little house with a garden. And he didn't just listen. He absorbed every detail, his steady gaze holding hers as though she were sharing truths more valuable than any deal he had ever signed. And then Daniel offered something in return. Pieces of himself she never thought she would hear. He spoke about growing up in a mansion filled with silence, about parents who replaced affection with expectation. He admitted he built his empire not from passion, but as a shield against loneliness. "I've been surrounded by people my entire life," he confessed, his voice quieter now. "And yet, I've never truly felt seen. Until tonight." Sophia's breath caught, her pulse racing. The air between them shifted. The glittering restaurant faded into the background, leaving only the two of them suspended in a fragile, unspoken understanding. Her walls began to crumble, not because he asked, but because for the first time in her life, she didn't feel invisible. Hours slipped away. They traded soft laughter, drifted into easy silences, and shared glances that carried more weight than words ever could. Sophia kept telling herself this couldn't be real. Her, a housekeeper, and him, a billionaire. Yet here it was, unfolding right in front of her, and she wasn't sure she wanted it to end. By the time they stepped outside, the city lights shimmered like 1,000 secrets begging to be told. Daniel walked her to her car, his presence steady, protective, yet unsettling in its closeness. Just as she reached for the handle, he stopped her. "Sophia," his voice trembled, something she'd never heard before. "I don't know what tomorrow will look like. I know our worlds are different. But tonight changed something in me, and I can't pretend it didn't." Her heart pounded so loudly she was certain he could hear it. She wanted to run, shield herself from disappointment. Yet another part of her longed to believe him. "I'm scared," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Scared that this is just kindness, and tomorrow you'll forget." For a moment, Daniel only looked at her, his gray eyes glowing in the soft wash of the street lamp. Then he leaned closer, his tone steady but bare of armor. "This isn't kindness, Sophia. This is real." Her breath caught. The world tilted. "May I kiss you?" he asked softly. Everything inside her spun. And in that fragile instant, the lines, between boss and housekeeper, between two separate worlds, blurred into something uncharted. "Yes," she breathed. And with that single word, everything changed. Would you trust Daniel's words if you were her, even knowing how far apart their worlds seemed? That kiss lingered in Sophia's heart like a secret flame, but what followed tested them both in ways neither could have foreseen. The next morning, she woke with her stomach in knots. Would Daniel Harrington, the man who kissed her with such intensity beneath Chicago's streetlight, wake up with regret? Would he retreat behind the cold walls of wealth and distance that had defined him for so long? She braced for disappointment. But instead, when she stepped into the kitchen of the Lincoln Park estate, she found him waiting. A single mug of coffee sat on the counter, made exactly how she liked it, though she had never once told him her preference. When he smiled and said, "Good morning, beautiful," her fears unraveled. Over the weeks that followed, a quiet rhythm settled between them. By day, she kept to her duties. But when the staff left and the estate grew still, she and Daniel would find each other. Sometimes they wandered the manicured gardens together. Some nights, they lingered on the terrace beneath a sky scattered with stars. Daniel canceled meetings he once would have considered untouchable just to share a quiet meal with her. In those moments, Sophia discovered the man behind the billionaire's facade, the one who longed not for power, but for laughter, warmth, and honesty. For the first time in her life, Sophia felt truly chosen. But the outside world noticed. Whispers started among the staff, then spread beyond the estate's walls. Soon, Daniel's family and business associates began to question his absences, his sudden distraction. One evening, his mother called from Boston, her tone sharp as glass. "You're risking everything. Daniel, your reputation, your company. This girl is not your equal. People will laugh at you." Sophia froze in the hallway, overhearing every word. Daniel's voice, usually cool and controlled, carried a steel she had never heard before. "She is worth more than every empty dinner I've ever attended. If they laugh, let them." The words should have comforted her. Instead, guilt twisted in Sophia's chest. Was she unraveling his world? The true test of their bond came when Daniel invited her to a high-society charity gala at the Drake Hotel ballroom. It was the kind of night where every step was photographed, every gesture dissected. Sophia's instinct was to refuse. Standing beside the fountain in his garden, she shook her head. "I'll embarrass you," she whispered. "I don't know their games. I don't belong there." But Daniel took her hands, his gaze unwavering. "I don't want you to be like them. I want you to be you. That's what they'll never understand." With trembling courage, she agreed. On the night of the gala, he arranged for a stylist to prepare her. And when Sophia descended the staircase in a silk gown that shimmered like midnight, Daniel was left speechless. Reporters swarmed when they arrived. Cameras flashed. Questions flew through the air. Inside the ballroom, whispers rippled like wildfire when the billionaire walked in holding the hand of a woman the world believed could never belong. Sophia's heart nearly stopped when one of Daniel's former flames, dripping with privilege, sneered, "She's your date? How quaint." Before Sophia could shrink back, Daniel pulled her close, his voice carrying across the room. "This is Sofia Alvarez, the woman who has changed my life." The ballroom froze in stunned silence. Something shifted that night. Some judged her, others whispered behind manicured hands, but none could ignore her. She laughed easily, spoke with honesty, and carried herself with a grace born not from wealth, but from resilience. By the end of the evening, even the most skeptical faces had softened, won over by the quiet charm of the woman Daniel had chosen. For Sophia, that realization, that she could hold her own in a room designed to intimidate, felt like stepping into a destiny she had never dared dream. Still, not everyone welcomed their love. Daniel's family tried again, parading lists of suitable women from elite circles. Business partners hinted at consequences, reputations, risks. But the more the world pressed against them, the closer they became. 6 months later, Daniel led her back to the Golden Rose, the same restaurant where she had once been abandoned, and by the very window where she had waited in humiliation, he dropped to one knee. With tears streaming down her face, Sophia whispered yes. A promise born from pain, but transformed into pure joy. 2 years later, their story came full circle. In the garden of their Chicago home, surrounded by family and friends who had finally accepted their bond, they renewed their vows. Their daughter, Nora, with curls like her mother's and gray eyes like her father's, played among the flowers Sophia had planted with her own hands. Daniel leaned in, his voice low against her ear. "I built empires and thought I was powerful. But you, Sophia, you gave me a life worth living." As the sun sank behind the horizon, Sophia reflected on the journey that had begun with rejection and ended in a love that had shattered every barrier. Sometimes blessings arrive dressed as heartbreak, she thought. That night, Sophia drifted to sleep in Daniel's arms, grateful for the twist of fate that had turned her deepest humiliation into unexpected hope. But what about you? Do you think love like this can survive in real life, when two very different worlds collide? Did their journey make you believe a little more in the power of destiny? If it did, drop the number 100 in the comments and let us know what country you're watching from. And don't forget to share this story with someone who still believes in true love.